Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3.
Check, check. Mic check.
Thank you for that and for having me on. So, our illustrious goblin adventurers have been effectively banished from their homeland of the swamp. No good deed goes unpunished, especially among goblin kind. In this case, the goblins were able to find a cure for the plague, or at least treatment for the plague that has been decimating their kinfolk, but they did this by unwittingly enlisting the aid of a god who wasn't Magubliet, and the clergy of Magubliet has taken notice and has violently taken notice. So now the party has found themselves traveling with a caravan of Verdun and has for the moment taken refuge in a Githzerai monastery in the mountains. And as per custom, we're going to go around. Each of you can introduce your character and your character's class. And the question for the week is, what is your character afraid of? And when I say afraid of, I don't mean like afraid of spiders or afraid of clowns or whatever it is. I mean, what are they afraid of on an existential level? What is their great fear? We will start with Notlatch.
Notlatch. Notlatch, our little goblin rogue. The thing he's most scared of, as often as he closes himself off, the thing he's most scared of is being actually alone.
Being alone as in being alone in the crowd, or being alone as in being truly isolated, like desert island type situation?
Being truly alone as in the, like, knowing he doesn't have backup coming. Knowing Klaz and Klasky aren't going to be there.
Okay. And am I correct in remembering that Notlatch is a rogue?
Yep.
Okay. Klaz.
I would say Klaz's greatest fear is being forgotten. You know, he's a bard. He goes around towns telling stories about himself. Whether they're true or not, it's kind of not the point. I think he just wants to be remembered, and he's afraid that if he died, people would be like, oh well, and just forget about him next week. So I would say that's his fear.
Okay.
And he is a bard.
Okay. And Erev.
Erev is most afraid, I think, of not amounting to anything or not being able to pass on any kind of insight in the future. Having no legacy, I suppose, is a better way to put it.
Okay. And finally, Klasky.
Let me unmute myself. There we go. Klasky's fear is that she will lose her little brother. Like, her older brother means a lot to her and everything, but not as much as her little brother because she has spent the most time with her little brother than Klaz. So if she lost him, that's absolutely terrifying to her and she wouldn't know what to do because she doesn't entirely know Plaz, but she knows Not Latch. And if she loses Not Latch, it's like, okay, I'm alone now in this life. What do I do? And she is a rogue at the moment.
All right. So, in this monastery, this is going to be something that I would say that Klaz would have likely heard about places like this before, but you definitely wouldn't have seen one. And for the rest of you, you probably wouldn't even have heard of something like this. It's enormous. It's the size of something like a very large university with a lot of raised courtyards where Githzerai and others who they've allowed to come and stay here are practicing martial arts and in some cases practicing things that are a little bit more mystical in nature, practicing what appears to be some sort of magic, although the nature of it isn't entirely clear. And it's just really outside the realm of goblin experience to even contextualize something like this place of learning where there's people who aren't even from this plane of existence interacting with all sorts of other different people and performing actions that require a remarkable amount of focus, which goblin kind aren't particularly well known for. Now, how would each of you, do you think, be reacting to this site as you're being exposed to this place for the first time? We'll start with Aerith.
Erev is actually just absolutely overjoyed as a monk. Like, this is their sort of natural habitat without ever having really realized it, only ever having themselves to learn from in the swamp, basically. Whereas here it's an actual place to exchange wisdom and ideas.
Okay. And Notlatch, same question.
Notlatch is in awe of this place. The wheels in his head are turning 100 miles an hour, wondering what's actually going on here.
Okay. And Klaz.
A lot of wonder and curiosity. You know, he loves seeing new things, especially basically anything other than goblins. He loves to find out information about, to see. He's a bit of an explorer at heart, so he's full of curiosity and awe and wonder.
All right. And finally, Klasky.
Klasky, she is honestly intrigued by everything new around her, but she is admittedly a bit afraid because so much stuff is new. She doesn't know this area as well because back home she had to learn the ins and outs and everything and everyone possible so she could be sneaky or be able to retrieve things for Not Latch and her family. But here it's new. She doesn't know anyone. She doesn't know the routine or the routes of certain trades or people. So she's intrigued, but also scared.
Okay, fair enough. So you are seen off to comfortable set of quarters. I believe I had described some of that the last time. And Erev, you are awakened gently but firmly early in the morning by a monk informing you that the abbot wishes to speak with you. And he says something about taking the measure of you, but it's not exactly clear what that means.
All right. Erev is fully willing to cooperate with that.
Okay. You are led to a courtyard that is separate from the rest and that is above the rest. So if you're in the middle of it, you can essentially be hidden from view and not have to look at anybody else in this monastery, or you can walk to the edges of it and get a pretty good view of everything around. In the center of this place is a Githzerai who in some ways reminds you a little bit of the strange human knight attendant you had met, in the sense that he's clearly older. His gray hair is tied up in a top knot, and he has a closely trimmed gray beard. But he sits very straight, and you just have a general sense of competence. His eyes are sharp and focused, and he's sitting in a lotus position. As you approach, the monk who brought you is going to bow and walk away, and the abbot spends a moment looking at you without really saying anything before he finally says, "You don't have the same bearing as the other goblins or as any other goblin I've seen. I mean, no offense, honored guest, but goblins tend to be more," and he actually gestures his hands, clearly trying to come up with some kind of term to express what it is he wants to say. And finally he's going to say, "You have a certain calm sense of couth that is not common to your people."
I'll take that as a compliment, given what you outsiders think of goblins usually.
Trust me, it was meant as such, and I mean no disrespect to you, your companions, or your people in general. Just you move more like one of us. The way you balance your steps, the way you seem to interact with the world as you go. And I can't help but notice that, like us, you seem to not particularly favor any kind of armor, and you seem to rely more on the calmness and certainty of your motion than on force or surprise. How did you come to... Go ahead.
When I was a younger goblin, I was much more in line with the others, but one day when out picking berries, I spotted a great winged beast overhead, and seeing that, it's hard to describe, but it almost calmed the mind somewhat, and provided a sense of focus, I guess, that is rare among my kind. Just something so awe-inspiring and powerful.
You witnessed something beyond the world as you had known it up until that point, and that awakened something else in you.
Yes, I would say so.
Well, he's going to stand up and dust off his robes. He's wearing loose-fitting clothing in which he moves very easily. Going to say, "I would be a poor teacher if I did not learn at every possible opportunity and from every traveler. No doubt your people have some insights in the martial arts that mine have yet to discover. May I interest you in a friendly sparring match?"
I would be honored.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
Okay. So Go ahead, Mara, and roll initiative.
I see. This is how the dice are going to be today. 2. So, well, actually, technically 5 because of the dexterity modifier. But
Okay. What is your AC?
my AC is 14.
So as you're taking your stance and essentially waiting for somebody to tell you that it's time to start, all of a sudden there's just a fist in your face. He doesn't actually make contact with you. He clearly could have if he had wanted to, but he did not. And with that, it's your turn.
All right, I'm going to swing back, I suppose. And
Okay.
I'm not going to use my knife, as I don't think it's that kind of match. Okay, so that's going to be a 19 for a standard punch.
All right, so that lands. Go ahead and roll damage.
Okay, and that's going to be a total of 7 damage.
All right. So he reels backward several steps and looks at you with genuine surprise. He clearly did not expect you to connect on him. He's going to step forward and going to make a swing that misses. And then, as you're sort of congratulating yourself on the punch that missed you, you're going to get kicked in the legs so hard you kind of spin around before you land on the ground. And in that moment where you're realizing, like, you've definitely lost this fight, instead of anything forceful happening, he's just going to kneel and extend a hand, offering to help you up.
I'll take it.
All right. So he helps you to your feet and bows respectfully, and he says, "Thank you. You performed impressively for one so young and without formal training."
I appreciate your words. It means a lot, given that what I practiced on were random swamp trees.
Well, young goblin, I'm sure the trees didn't stand a chance. Now, it is our custom that we take the measure of everyone who visits here, and because your companions do not fight as we do, we're going to have to measure them in another way. Would you care to observe as we do this?
Sure. I haven't seen too much of them myself, actually, so yes, I'm quite curious.
Okay. He's going to summon the same monk who had brought you and say a few words in their language. I'm guessing your character doesn't speak Gith.
No, that is not one of the languages I took, surprisingly.
Okay. And he's going to walk with you to a large open, essentially a gymnasium, and invite you to have a seat off to the side. And another monk will bring you all a tea service and some breakfast. The other 3 of you are going to be, again, politely but firmly awakened by this young Githzerai monk, who is going to inform you that you have been requested.
I mean, Notlatch is just gonna kind of follow along. He knows he doesn't stand a chance at running away.
Okay.
Lasky would threaten him with a knife at first because she doesn't like being awoken suddenly, but then she'll just follow.
Claus would probably just wake up, sleepy-eyed, mention something about how it's too early for this, and get up and follow.
There's a moment, Klosky, when he sees the knife, when you see him tense up a little bit, and you absolutely have the sense that this person is completely comfortable with violence if it comes to that, but he doesn't initiate it, nor does he even comment on you having threatened him. And when Klaus says something about it being too early, he is going to reply to you with some philosophical euphemism about the nature of time being circular and it's never too early or too late, and that sort of thing.
Monk arrives exactly when they mean to.
Exactly. So he leads the three of you through an area of the monastery to a fairly large building, and he will pull open a pair of large double doors that open outward and gesture for you all to enter.
He enters.
Okay.
I hope this isn't a trap.
What's going on in there?
The abbot, as well as your other companion, are in there.
Hey, Arab. What's going on?
I hope you're not betraying
Oh,
us.
nothing much. Just nursing a bruise on my leg.
What'd you do? Kick a stool?
No. More like after a lifetime of kicking trees, my one finally kicked me back.
So, as the three of you enter, the scene shifts, and what you three each see is something slightly different. Not Latch. You are in a crowded city, a little bit like the town you went to visit the temple, but unlike that town, it's much more, it's almost claustrophobically crowded. There's people everywhere, and you don't see anyone you know whatsoever. And a guard is going to grab you by the shoulder and say, "Got you." And another guard, Klaus, you're going to see this. And there's another guard who's standing right next to you who says, "There's another one. There's a goblin bard named Klaus. Has anyone seen him?" And several people are going to immediately look around. And several of them look right at you. Some of them even make eye contact with you. And the general response of the crowd is, "I don't know who you're talking about. We haven't seen any other goblins." Klowski, what you're going to see is this guard who's got Notlatch by the shoulder, essentially dragging Notlatch toward a gallows from your position essentially across the town square. So you're some distance away. And Erev, you're watching all of this unfold, and from your position next to the abbot, you know that what you're seeing is an illusion, but you realize your companions almost certainly do not. So, starting with Notlatch, how are you responding to this situation?
I am going to reach for my knife, and the hand that's holding me, is this just a gloved hand, or is this a gauntleted hand?
Gauntleted hand.
So yeah, I'm going to reach for my knife, and I'm going to try and swing around to get him in the arm, just where the gauntlet ends, try to get him at that joint.
Okay.
So
Go ahead. Go ahead and make an attack roll.
Here we go. That is A 24 to hit.
All right, so you manage to stab this person in the arm, and he does let go of you. From pretty much every direction, there are more gauntleted hands grabbing at you, but you are able to dodge all of them. However, as you're looking around for any help or just any way out, there's just a sense that this town square that you seem to be in, it just seems to keep going. There's no end to it that you can discern, nor are you able to see anyone you recognize at all whatsoever. With that in mind, are you going to try to stand and fight, or are you going to try to run away? What's your course of action going to be?
I'm going to need a spot to hide real quick. Is there anything that I can see nearby that looks like I'd be able to duck around a corner, maybe to break their break their line of sight and then try to hide?
A little ways off, you do see a stack of crates.
Yeah. I make for the crates as fast as my little legs will carry me.
All right, so you take off in the direction of these crates, and as you're doing that, what you quickly realize is they're not getting any closer, and without even looking back, you can hear the sounds of pursuit happening. Claude, you have two things going on. One is you've watched your brother take off in a random direction, and two, there's this increasing fervor among guards and just random passers-by to find you, but you're standing right there.
You said I saw a Notlatch run away.
You did see Notlatch run away.
He would probably start to go after Notlatch, but as people around him are saying, oh, who's Claz? Where's Claz? Probably start to pause and look around. Wait, I'm Claz. Don't you remember me? I'm Claz. Kind of looking around for people he recognizes, someone he's told a story to, or had a drink with, and trying to tell them, I'm Claz. Don't you remember me?
So, pretty much everyone you see around you is someone you have interacted with and recognized. There are people who you've performed with. There are people who've been to your shows. You basically, it's one of those weird situations where you don't even know where this town is, but everyone here you've met at some point.
So he'd probably start to get a little frantic. Maybe even hysterical at some point. Just pulling out his lute, doing his little tune, and saying, "Look, remember this? You've heard this before. Come on, you and I played this song together. Come on, remember me." And kind of freaking out a little bit.
Okay. Go ahead and make a performance check.
Okay. Oh, that would be a natural 1.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Okay, so basically, yeah, you're doing this and you start to perform, and somebody actually snatches the lute out of your hand and just like, look, okay, this is no time for you to play Wonderwall. We need to find Claz. And then he just immediately looks away from you and goes back to searching. I don't know why, but any situation where a bard does anything, whether it's the middle of a battle or an arcane ritual or something, that's just always what I picture is them being that one guy at the party who says, okay, here's Wonderwall. Anyway, Klasky, what you're mostly seeing is Notlatch fleeing from one group of guards toward a stack of crates. And there's two things happening in that situation. One, the now very angry guards with weapons drawn are chasing after him. Two, there are a couple of guards who have positioned themselves behind the crates with weapons drawn. Clearly, it's not clear how they know he's coming, but they know he's coming. What do you do?
Well, she is going to have a dagger in each hand and start running toward him. It's like, not Latch, watch out! There's guards beside you, waiting by the crates. And she's gonna start running toward his direction, but have like a threatening glare at each of the guards. It's
Okay.
like, focus on me. I've murdered people. I've stolen things. Don't go after him, please.
All right. As you make your way toward him, the crowd suddenly seems to get thicker, and there are just people. Nobody's actively grabbing you or trying to stop you. They're just sort of blundering into your way. How are you responding to that?
She's just going to try to dash through them, but
Okay.
she will reach a point where she might purposely trip someone or nick them somewhere, try to like throw their attention off so she can have a path.
All right. And as you do that for all three of you, the scene fades away, and you find yourself in what amounts to a large, empty training hall. There are practice weapons on racks against the walls. There are benches along the walls where they're clearly meant for people to watch people training and sparring. And on one of those benches is Arav basically having breakfast with the abbot.
I'm assuming Klasky sees Notlatch.
Yeah, you can all see each other, and you're all. And there's no threat to anything. You're all fine, as is your equipment.
Yeah, Klasky's gonna run over to Notlatch and wrap him in a hug. It's like, I thought I was gonna lose you.
Where are they?
I think it was an illusion, but you're fine. You're safe now. And she's gonna send the most threatening, deadly glare possible. Like, if her glare could kill someone, it would. To Arev and the person beside them. It's like, you did this. What did we do to deserve this, you bastards?
Aaron was just munching on some toast, like, this is really good bread.
So the abbot is going to make eye contact with Klowski, note your furious expression, and then turn to Arav and go, yes, actually, so to the north, there's a really good sunlight exposure. We have some of the best wheat fields for miles around, and some of our monks dedicate, if you can believe it, almost their entire lives to learning the art of baking.
Yes, I never would have even really thought about firing bread a second time after it's already cooked.
So
Classic's gonna throw a dagger at their feet.
So the abbot is going to. He's not going to pick up the dagger. He's just going to extend his hand toward it, and it will begin to hover in the air. And as he is continuing to talk to Erev, he'll be just admiring this dagger as it's hovering point down just above his hand. And he's going to say loudly enough for the three of you to hear. Actually, before this goes on, I haven't heard from Klaus in a minute. Are you just taking in the scenery, or would you like for your character to be doing anything?
He's probably having a slight existential crisis and kind of on his knees looking at his hands. Not really paying attention to very much right now.
Okay.
That scared him quite a lot.
Fair. All right. So the abbot is just kind of admiring this dagger as it's floating in front of him. And to Erev, he is going to say, yes, there was a time when we Gith all believed that the only path to greatness or to excellence was through combat and warfare, and certainly that is one path. But greatness can be found in many ways. It can be found in, well, combat, of course, but also in mastering a craft like baking bread. And it can also be found, and at this point he's going to look at Klowski and say, in mastering one's own fears and one's own anger. And perhaps the best way to take the measure of a person is to see how they respond in the situations that they dread the most. Wouldn't you agree? And as he says that, he's going to gesture, and your dagger is going to float back to you handle first.
That is not the way to teach us. If you want to somehow find a way for us to better ourselves, we already know our fears. You didn't have to put us through it. I will happily throw this at you again if you treat us this way. Is this how you treat all of your guests?
He ponders the situation momentarily, and then he says, no, I subjected your friend Erev to a humiliating beating. Although, to Erev's credit, that was a solid punch that she landed. I was not expecting that. Well done, Erev.
Erev is just going to contentedly nod as they take another bite out of their toast.
The purpose of this trial was not for your benefit, Goblin. The purpose of this trial was for my understanding. I needed to take the measure of you before I knew if I could trust you. If you had abandoned each other, or if you had all succumbed to the most violent options for your situation, then that would have spoken greatly about who the three of you are as people. But you didn't do that. He gestures to Notlatch and says, Notlatch used as much force as was necessary to get out of the situation and then immediately attempted to get away, which was entirely reasonable. He gestures to Klaus. This one simply went with performing, with being their truest self in the face of their greatest fear, which is not an easy thing to do. Very often people fold and demonstrate a part of themselves that they have hidden from the world. And whether you find your brother's love of attention to be noble or not, the consistency is certainly admirable. And you attempted to intervene directly to save your brother and use an impressively minimal amount of force in doing so. So, I have taken the measure of you as I needed to do in order to safely welcome you into my home. Well,
Fair point, I guess. I did the same way to my town, learning the ways of everyone to make life easier. And in a sense, better. But a bit of forewarning would have been kind.
go ahead and make a history check. I'm sorry, Klowski, make a history check, please. Should have been more clear about who I wanted to do that.
Surprisingly, a 16.
So, as you're saying the words, you remember some stories you've heard about the Gith, and there's an awkward moment where you're not an expert on the Gith by any stretch, but you have heard some stories about them, and you realize that, or you recall that kindness is a trait that they don't generally possess or value in any great measure. So you're not wrong for your statement, but it's just one of those awkward things where you realize this might not have been the person to say that to.
I apologize. It's rude awakening and then immediately thrown into a nightmare is not something I quite enjoy. So I'm sorry for the words I spoke. I hope we can be of good company in your town. And she's kind of gritting her teeth a little bit, but she's truly apologetic to the best of her ability because she knows this is really the best option for her family at this point.
Okay. While you're talking, monks are going to bring tea and a light breakfast out for the rest of the group. And while all this is going on, are Notlatch and Klaus saying or doing anything, or are you continuing to let Klowski do all the talking?
Notlatch is actually going to see that Klaus is having a bit of an existential crisis and go over and try to comfort him in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. Go ahead and make a medicine check.
$14.
All right. So you experience a modest amount of success in doing this, and I'm actually going to leave it with you. How do you succeed at comforting your badly shaken older brother?
Notlatch is going to wander on over to his brother and just first try to get his attention, and once he has that attention, it's just going to try and talk him down, tell him that this was really just this was a cruel joke being played on us.
And how is Klaus going to respond in this situation?
After a moment, he would kind of start to pay attention to Notlatch, and honestly, a big help simply talking to him kind of starts to help him shake out of it, simply because hey, someone remembered me, he wouldn't say very much. He'd kind of just nod his head and kind of stand up and start to pay attention to what's going on now.
Okay. As you're being served your breakfast, the abbot is going to say, so I'm given to understand that you all have run afoul of your own deity?
Yes. We were searching for a cure for a sickness that had set in our tribe, and we went to the humans for help, and we found it at a temple, but what gave us that help was not human. It was apparently a god of some kind, and our god originally isn't a fan of that.
It's certainly possible that we Gith worshipped a god at one time or another, but I'll be honest with you, if we did, we've lost all memory of it. We were enslaved for many, many generations, so who or what we were before that is lost to history, sadly. However, I think you might have a problem similar to the one we had when we became free. Namely, every being has perhaps an essence, one might call it, something that distinguishes them from all others, that serves as a light in the cosmos. And the essence is distinct to the kind of being you are, which means that your goblin god can track you through this, much in the same way that our former masters were able to track us through ours. I may be able to teach the lot of you to calm and control yourselves in a way that will make it harder for the servants of Maglubiet to find you.
That could be good.
Now, unfortunately, or I guess fortunately from my point of view, there is something I would need to ask of you in return.
Uh-huh.
What is it?
How much do you know about Githyanki?
Can I roll a history?
Yeah.
Claus can roll history with advantage because you've been about a bit. The rest of you can roll history if you wish without advantage.
My dice hate me. I rolled a 3 and a 2.
Get new dice. Class K rolled a 13.
Okay.
Erev got a natural 20.
Okay.
I got an 18.
18. Okay. So, Klaus, yes, you remember that a Githyanki is a kind of sandwich that was a favorite of Zas Tom's before he became a lich and ceased to require food. Klausky, you remember that Githyanki are related to the Gith and that they are more violent and dangerous than the Gith, especially in light of your last relatively high roll. You recall that there's a distinct relationship there. You don't necessarily know the details. And then those of you who rolled higher, you remember that the Githyanki are raiders, slavers. They're ostensibly doing this for a good cause, which is to prevent the empire of slavers who had enslaved them and many others from ever rising again. But they have just zero concern or remorse for what they do to anybody else in the process. And
despite the fact...
Go ahead.
Continue.
No, please go ahead.
So, despite the fact that Erev rolled the highest, really the second that she remembered that they're the ones with dragons, she completely lost all focus and was like, they're the ones with the winged beasts, aren't they? With a much more excited tone than is really usual of her calm and reflective self.
So the abbot will nod and say, yes, their queen made a deal to have the use of dragons. Unfortunately, the way they use those magnificent beings isn't for any noble cause or even a worthy one of beings of such power. The great winged beasts are reduced to, well, raiding, basically.
Yeah, you guys do something like the orcs do. They raid and slay.
Yes, they do. We of the Gitzerai are more content to live our lives in peace, fortifying our monasteries and cities against the possible return of the grand design. But the Githyanki have chosen a much more aggressive stance, much to the detriment of anyone unfortunate enough to encounter them. So, it might interest you to know that there is a Githyanki scouting party nearby. They haven't formed a permanent settlement yet, but it would be in the best interests of everyone who lives in this region. Us, the orcs, the goblins, even the humans on the other side of your swamp. If the Githyanki interest in the area was quelled, forcibly quelled. Now, it won't take much. If you were to dispatch a few of them, then likely they would view the area as not being worth the trouble and move on.
I think I understand what you're asking. I need a little time to prepare.
Time would be good.
Lasky will look at her brothers and say, yeah, I think we need to recover from today, and then we'll give you an answer.
The abbot is going to stand up, dust off his robes, and he will walk up to Klowski, but stop about 10 paces away and give you a very formal bow. And he's going to say, that is understandable. You all have been through quite a bit on your path to our monastery, and necessary as this endeavor was, I understand that it can't have been particularly pleasant for you. So, eat as you need to, walk the grounds if you would like. All of the monks here will be informed to give you any help you need within reason. Your Verdaran friends will be here for a few days as well if you would like to interact with them. And tomorrow we shall discuss it. And I understand that some of you don't favor such early morning habits, so we'll discuss it around noontime.
And she'll return the bow, seeing that he did it, so she'll match him. Thank you so much.
So he's going to leave, and a couple of monks are going to escort you all back to your quarters, which the quarters in question are open, so it's not a situation where you're in any way confined there. You can very easily come and go, and they're also fairly comfortable.
Plasky will just flop on the bed and it's like, ugh, I am so drained. That, how do you do it, Claus? How do you just talk to people? That was draining.
I'm sorry, are we in the same room?
Yes, everybody's together back in your shared quarters.
He's kind of strumming his lute for a moment and kind of speaks up. You know, I guess I've always been good at talking, so kind of just what I do. Can't really tell you how to do it or how to deal with it. He kind of seems a little depressed after the nightmare.
Well, you've always been just good at talking to people, and you know how to get their attention and have them remember you, and especially with your great music. I mean, I still remember you playing music when I was a little child, so. But yeah, if I'm being honest, I was keeping mental notes whenever you interacted with the people on this trip. And I just, it's not my forte. I'd rather go back to quietly stealing and sneaking about, if I'm being honest. But he kind of pushed my buttons, and I'm not looking forward to tomorrow.
Notlatch is gonna come forward and look at the two of them. I think we should do it.
Yeah, I suppose we probably should do it.
During all of this, Erev is notably more enthusiastic with like, yes, we absolutely need to go see these other gith. There might be dragons there.
Well, okay. We'll do that then. I mean, it's not like we have much else to do or really go, so this will be a good start, right? Something new.
We can't go home. May as well start something totally new.
I just hope this is the lesser of two evils, I guess. But we know what we know what they're capable of now, so that's an idea at least. You know?
Okay. I guess we help them.
Out of game, I wasn't quite expecting the group to so enthusiastically agree to go murder people they've never met, but I'm definitely here for it. Please don't misunderstand me. Now, you will pretty much have the rest of the day at this place to do whatever it is you would like to do. So is there anything in particular any of your characters would be doing?
Erov would like to try and find someone who's a little more expert with the make of weapons.
Right. So you find a smithy, and there is a team of monks working there. Some of them, or most of the work that's going on is the things you would expect in daily life: tools, farming implements. But there are some very competent weaponsmiths there.
I'm just gonna go up and pull out the dagger with the strange markings that gives me the +1 that I found. And I'm gonna sort of show it to them and just say, I found this weapon while amongst humans hidden away, and as much as I am confident in my skills, this weapon allowed me to dispatch a bugbear, which I do not believe I could have done otherwise. And just sort of like asking for more information about it.
So the weaponsmith is going to roll her eyes at the distraction, but she will take the dagger from you and sight down it, test the weight of it, even practice a few basic movements in the air. And she's going to say, this is a weapon of elf make, and not a style that's really made anymore. You have to understand, I'm not really an expert on elven weaponry, but I do recognize some general details of it. And then she's going to proceed into just an elaborate lecture about the entire history of elven weapon making with more detail than you would ever possibly want. And I was going to say, this weapon seems to be of a style that dates back to around the time of the Crown Wars. So it's really miraculous that it survived or that you found it here, although I suppose there likely were elven communities here at some point. As far as the properties of the weapon itself, so she's going to tap it and put her ear to it, and then she'll gesture you closer, and she's going to say, do you hear anything?
I'll put my ear up to it.
So you don't hear the response in your ears as much as you hear it in your mind, but you hear a very calm voice telling you about the vulnerabilities of the person standing next to you, of this weaponsmith. Specifically, their apron is pretty thick and tough, so if you're going to stab them, you need to stab them somewhere other than what's covered by the apron, and that the gloves also offer protection. And what you come to realize is that as a bonus action, you can give yourself advantage on an attack with this weapon in addition to its +1 property.
Are there charges to that, or is it just...
As far as you can tell, the weapon is a sentient artifact, and it just has a fascination with finding the weaknesses on everything around it, and it has bonded to you as its own. You're essentially attuned to it. It's bonded to you as its owner.
All right. Yeah, I'm gonna tell her I do hear something and thank her for her service. And the other thing that I'm going to do is, I think it was an axe of some kind of make from last session. I'm going to show her that and basically say, and there's also this, which is, well, bugbear proportioned, and none of us are. How much would this go for?
She'll test the weight of it and try swinging it a few times, and then look at the small amount of poison that's weeping from the blade. And at length, she'll say, this is a very rare kind of weapon. I've only heard of them being carried by highly favored clerics of Magoobliet, and I would imagine if you could find an interested buyer, you would get upwards of 1,000 gold for it.
Your honesty tells me that you are not an interested buyer.
So this is the first time since you've been here that you've heard any of the Gitzerai laugh, but she actually does laugh at that. And as she hands you back the axe, she says, "Please don't misunderstand me. It is a fantastic weapon, but the things we make," and she gestures to some of the work that she's been working on, which are all things like rapiers, short swords. She says, "We prefer things that require a little bit more delicate touch than sheer brute force. If it's any consolation, in the time between now and whenever you find a buyer for that very fine blade, I must say, you can probably harvest some of the poison off of the blade onto your non-poisoned weapons, although I wouldn't do it onto the dagger you showed me. I don't know how goblin and elf magics would interact with each other, and it's not something I would want to be standing too close to when it happens."
Thank you. I will consider that, and I am certain my companions would enjoy something to enhance their own strikes.
Bit of advice: make sure that your companions are well outfitted. Travelers come here seeking our weaponry, and they often think that having, I don't know, some magical sword or magical armor is going to be the key to their accomplishments. But really, the true magic is the friends you make along the way, and the ability to have them murder people so you don't have to, and or your ability to hide behind them when you need to.
You know, I think the Gith and goblins might be a little more alike than we previously thought.
Many of my kinfolk would stab you for saying that, but I can't really disagree. Does anyone else have anything they want to be doing while you're in this large new place?
Knowing what we're planning on doing, Notlatch is actually going to be trying to get together some vials or something like that so that he can actually harvest the poison off of that axe and sort of distribute it amongst the group.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how many vials in a day.
So basically, you can harvest 1 dose of poison per day off of the axe, and 1 dose will coat 1 weapon for 1 day.
Oh.
So to put it another way, you can, for every day you have the axe and aren't using it, you can transfer the effect to 1 other weapon for 1 day.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm definitely gonna do that, and I'm gonna try and refill the vials that I have already. So I'm thinking I only used one vial of the poison I already have. Like not just basically just trying to make sure that he has himself as well prepared for tomorrow to hopefully have a repeat of what happened with the hobgoblin priest.
Okay. So you're able to restock your supplies. When you ask the Gitzerai about it, specifically when it becomes clear that you're looking for. Actually, before I say anything, are you going to make it clear that you're looking for the ingredients for more poison, or are you just going to ask for ingredients without specifying what they're for?
I think if it's possible for me to ask for separate ingredients from separate people, I think that's what I would do.
Go ahead and make a charisma check.
Okay, we're at the mercy of the dice here. Can I use that inspiration point on this? Can't remember if there was.
You can.
Yeah, that's a lot better. 16.
All right. So yeah, you managed to visit the apothecary and find one of the finished products you need, and you managed to visit the gardens and get a hold of whatever else you need to sort of put it all together.
All right. The vial of poison that I get from the axe. I'm going to go to both Klasky and Klaz and try to figure out which one of them would want it or would think that they would get the most use out of it.
I think Klasky would probably use it more than me. Her talents are similar to yours, so.
Unless Erev has a secondary dagger or something?
Nope. The special dagger is my only weapon at the present time, so I'm holding on to that.
Okay.
I mean, Voss isn't wrong. I do have pretty similar skills to you. And, I mean, I can only do so much with these two daggers, but I got pretty far with them.
So you take this for tomorrow.
Thank you.
It's thick enough. If you put it on in the morning, good for the day. And correct me if I'm wrong, DM, but that D10 throw, and they take a 1d6 of poison, and they suffer from the poison condition if they.
And I'm going to leave it with the player to keep track of this, but if you're fighting the same opponent, each time you land a hit with that dagger, DC goes up by 2. So if you manage to hit them 5 times, it becomes a DC 20 saving throw, or else they are poisoned. Although, since I don't plan on having you fight any red dragons in the next couple of sessions, anything you would fight in the near future would probably already be dead anyway, but still.
Disappointing! Come on, guys. I'm sure at level 1 we can fight a red dragon.
You're level 2.
Level 2, right.
So a blue dragon, then.
There you go. All right, and are Klaus or Klauski going to be doing anything during essentially your day of downtime?
He's probably going to try and get back into his habit of speaking to people and getting information very nicely. Any information he can get about culture, history, whatever.
So that sounds like it would be maybe a persuasion check, and since you've got all day to do it and multiple people to talk to, go ahead and do it with advantage.
All right. That is a 23.
So you definitely succeed brilliantly at what it is you're trying to do. Would you like to tell me what kind of person you look for to talk to and how you ask?
Are there any bards around? Or minstrels or whatever?
You do find a monk who's playing I can't remember the name of the instrument, but something that looks like a Chinese version of a guitar, and just you're able to walk up and talk between when he's between songs.
He'd go up and hey, what's that instrument you're playing?
A reminder of home. It's been with me. It's been in my family since my grandfather's time.
He takes out his lute. I haven't had this for very long, but it's been a fun little instrument to play. Mind if I sit down and play with you for a little bit?
Please lead, and I'll see if I can keep up.
All right, he will start playing a little tune.
So the Gith plays along with you and is pausing as you're playing from time to time just to make sure that he's catching the thread of the song. What kind of tune would you be playing?
Something probably a little upbeat.
Okay. So it's slightly out of place given the nature of the monastery, but not entirely unwelcome. And something you notice is that not too far from where you're playing, there are a group of kids who are at their martial arts training, and they're clearly distracted by what you're doing. And their teachers at first are annoyed by the fact that the kids don't seem to be paying attention, but when they realize what they're distracted by, they essentially let it go. They essentially let the kids be a little bit distracted for this experience. As the song winds down, the monk says, "That was a pleasing tune. It's most of what my people have for music is, well, it's things you can train to. Not so much fun and vicarious as your music is. So thank you for sharing."
Oh. Music is a beautiful art. I'm happy to share it.
So you've traveled more than most of your companions, from what I understand. You've been about a bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure if my companions have ever. I'm not sure if they've ever really left home. Me, I've traveled a good bit. Seen a few places. Been in several towns that goblins are not normally welcome. That's it. I've seen a lot compared to them.
It's a blessing to see more of what the worlds have to offer than most. And he goes into a story about at some point before he came here, he traveled in in other worlds, other planes of existence, and got to meet different kinds of people. Is there anything in particular you want to learn from this person?
Probably not anything specific. Claus is just a very curious person, and just wanted to know a little bit about this, this people that he's staying with.
All right. So what you pick up from conversing with him is that's the most relevant information you pick up is that Githyanki and Githzerai, they are closely related to each other. At one time, they were considered one united people, and there was a civil war, and now they are separated. And it's a situation where any one of them taking a hostile action toward the other could set off a much larger conflict that nobody really wants. And you get the sense that what the Githzerai want more than anything else is to just essentially live out their lives in peace, which is not really consistent with what you're seeing around you because they're so heavily dedicated to warrior ways.
Class will make a mental note about that.
Okay. All right, Klowski. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Klaus.
I was just saying he doesn't really need to do anything else. He's just talking.
Okay. And Klowski, is there anything in particular your character is going to be doing?
For her, I don't really know. She would probably be either trying to find better weapons. Actually, no, realistically, she'd be going back to the training grounds they were at and trying to work on being faster and more responsive to situations. Because that nightmare really, really bothered her. And she wants to do better. So she'd probably, walk around town, trying to, weave through people faster or learn how people walk and such. So a bit of training on her part.
So as you're doing this, you eventually attract the attention of an older Githzerai, and she's just going to ask you pretty bluntly, what are you doing? What are you trying to do?
I am simply becoming more agile and kind of snake my way through crowds easier and faster. In case any one of my teammates is in danger, I want to be able to get to them faster without too much trouble. Without, resorting to too much violence.
All right. So she nods along as you're talking, and she says, do you mean something like this? And she walks a little way away from you to a courtyard nearby where several people are sparring, so they're not necessarily moving in the most predictable pattern. And it's hard to track her movements because she moves so fast, but she essentially runs between several sparring pairs and then runs back to you and doesn't seem to be winded in the process, and definitely didn't catch any hands or anything as she was doing this. And she says, do you mean something like that?
Yes, because as much as I've had typically have a bit of an anger to myself or resort to violence, I'd much prefer to use that as a last resort. I'd rather be sneaky and fast. And not be so lethal.
That is very noble of you. Would you like a lesson? I have some training in the matter, some accumulated Githzerai wisdom that I wouldn't mind passing along.
Yes, that would actually be wonderful. I'm mostly doing this for my little brother, if I'm being honest. He doesn't do crowds so well, so I want to be able to get to him as fast as I can, in case anything happens.
She mouths the word brother, and when you're done talking, she says, we don't have siblings as you do. We hatch from eggs, but some of those who hatched with me were very dear to me, so I have some concept of your concern. In any case, I can teach you some of what you would like to know. So she leads you to an empty training area and starts doing what amounts to footwork drills with you. And go ahead and make a dexterity check, please.
That will be a 17 for the dex.
Okay. So on a 17, you are able to pick up the movements of her footwork and the way she essentially spins and pirouettes in a way that it makes sense to you now that you've seen it demonstrated, but it's not anything you've seen before, and it's not whatsoever a natural or comfortable movement. And so what you're going to gain from this experience is that once per short rest, you can benefit from the disengage action without actually taking the disengage action. So you still retain your ability as a rogue, and I believe goblins have it as well, where you can disengage as a bonus action. But in addition to that, once per short rest, you have this ability where you can do it without burning your bonus action.
Nice. Thank you for the wonderful lesson. That was great. I'm surprised I didn't follow as more times than I did. You're a wonderful teacher.
As entertaining as it can be to watch students fall, I don't take the abbot's approach to training, and she's going to wink at you, indicating that she may know about what happened to Erev earlier in the day.
That is fair.
Right. So the evening passes quietly, and how do you all want to approach the conversation you're going to have with the abbot? It seemed like the group had pretty unanimously decided on accepting his offer, but how do you want to approach the conversation? Who wants to be the spokesman, as it were?
Klaz would probably volunteer.
You got
All
this.
right. All right. So the four of you make your way to the abbot's little area, and he greets you with a bow, invites you all to sit and have tea with him, and asks essentially what you have to say.
We, as a group, we've decided to say yes. We'll do as you ask.
For that, we will go ahead and engage in the training I promised you. before you set out. Some of the Githyanki have psionic abilities like what my people have, so in addition to helping with your problem, it will also potentially help you in the success of your mission. Whatever happens, the Githyanki can't know that it was us that sent you. If my people took part in this raid, it could set off a much larger conflict, but the Githyanki running afoul of some random goblins doesn't pose such a risk.
I understand.
So he's going to go through a series of sort of focus and mental exercises with each of you that mostly amount to just kind of quieting your mind, and rather than the sort of frenetic, almost ADHD type mindset one would associate with a goblin, it's a much calmer way of approaching. Erev, to you, this comes pretty naturally. This is very consistent with the training you've been doing in the swamp. For the rest of you, could each of you please give me a wisdom check?
$14.
Now, what'd you get?
Sorry, child was crawling on me. I got a 13.
Okay. Not unless your mic is muted.
I got an 18.
Okay. So that's enough. You actually all pretty much pick up what this person is putting down. It's a weird feeling to just kind of let everything go and have your mind be blank. But you find that you're all rather capable of it. Have your mind be blank, but also keep in mind the intentions and the things you want to accomplish. It's going to take most of the afternoon to get through this training process. And once you've done it, the abbot is going to ask if there's anything else the four of you need before you set out on this little quest that you're going to be going on.
I don't know. I'd say I'm good enough to go.
I'm ready to go.
I think I'm as ready as I'll ever be, so.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Knowledge.
Yeah. We're good.
Okay. So he gives you directions on how to reach the Githzerai camp, and he explains that they haven't built any kind of permanent base yet. He suspects that they're probably scouting the area for either an abandoned ruin or something that's not well defended that they can take over. Since you know where it is you need to go, how do you all want to approach it? Do you want to approach it? Do you want to use some kind of subterfuge to get close to the Githyanki to make your attack, or do you want to try to sneak up on them? What's it going to be?
I feel like stealth is this particular group's forte for the most part.
Yeah,
Mhm.
sneaking would be good.
Well, I mean, we're basically all rogues, so might as well. And you're right, it is our forte.
All right. And do you want to set out at nighttime, or do you want to set out during the day, keeping in mind it will take you more than a day to reach the Githyanki camp?
Probably set out in the morning.
Yeah, that seems like a good idea.
All right. You all set out. It's a relatively clear day, clear and crisp. And not long after you leave the Githzerais monastery, you're obliged to get off of the road and start moving stealthily, as you know that there are likely going to be Githyanki scouts in the area. Could everybody please make a stealth check?
$23.
Okay.
22.
Unnatural 22.
Okay. What'd Klaus get?
Sorry, I said 19.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you all managed to essentially blend into the scenery to the point that as you're traveling, you notice that there's an orc camp nearby. And when I say a camp, I do mean a camp. It's not in any way a permanent settlement. They seem to be passing through on their way to hunt, raid, or whatever it is they're doing. And they don't seem to notice you at all whatsoever as you go by. Do you all want to have any interaction with this orc tribe, or are you content to just leave well enough alone and stay focused on the goal you have ahead?
Hey, we could sell the axe to the orcs.
Do you really think they have the money to pay for that?
Well, I mean, they're orcs. The way how they live is by raiding the money from other people. So presumably, yes.
The poison on the axe is useful.
True, but it's also worth 1,000 gold. And we have 0 gold. Or very little gold right now.
What are we gonna buy out here?
I don't know, stuff.
I don't know. I kind of agree with Knowledge. Poison's really useful.
Fair, I suppose. We'll sell it after the poison runs dry.
All right. So at some point, you all will need to make camp. And are you all going to set a watch when you do, or are you going to just leave it to luck that nobody finds you?
I'll take a shift for watch.
Yeah, watch would be good.
Flasky will watch too.
Okay. So basically, you can break up a watch into each of you taking a shift, and while the others rest.
Yep.
Need each of you to make a Constitution check, please.
Is it Constitution?
Yes.
17?
Okay.
21.
Okay.
9.
Okay. What'd you get, Klowski?
10.
Klaus, on your shift, you are not quite asleep, but you are, and feel like you're nodding off. And you snap suddenly awake when you hear some rocks being displaced, and you're able to hide just in time as a Githyanki patrol walks by. It's two of them heavily armed, and one of them is fairly loudly admonishing the other. And from you don't understand their language, but just based on like body language and what he's pointing to and everything, you get the impression that he's annoyed that the other one had stumbled and made the noise, which means that you all are able to get through your long rest without it being disturbed and without having any problems. And when you are arrested, you know that the Githyanki camp is effectively just over the next hill from you. How are you going to make your raid? What's your plan?
So, what does this place look like? Are there walls?
It is a very well-ordered camp of essentially yurts. They're a little sturdier than what you would call a tent. They have a frame of wood or something like wood. But that being said, they're still temporary structures. There's no fortified wall per se around it, but there is a clear area around the camp, and it sits on a plateau. So there are pretty good lines of sight. And there are magical torches placed about every dozen feet or so. So the area, even at nighttime, the area is not in total darkness. And there are about 20 tents altogether.
I'd say we should just kind of check it out. Keep an eye out for patrols, kind of see if the guards are roaming around, or see if everybody is asleep before we go in.
It reminds me. Are we looking out at this campsite in the daytime or at night?
So during the daytime is the only time you'd be able to get a fairly good view of it, and you're kind of viewing it from a nearby hill. And something you will gather pretty quickly, if you don't already know, is that the Githyanki seem to, when they move around, they're not as active at night. And when they do move around at night, like when patrols leave the camp or anything like that, they make use of lanterns, which implies that they don't see as well in the dark as you do.
We could wait till nighttime, take out a patrol, use the lantern to light tents on fire.
That seems like our best option, so especially if we're gonna keep this as stealthy and quiet as we can.
I think that's a pretty good idea.
So am I correct in understanding that it sounds like the party wants to try to stealth up to this place at nighttime set a fire and then use the ensuing chaos to do some damage before you make your escape, or something like that.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Okay. In that case, that is where we're going to pick up next time.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you for that wonderful story and the suspense of next week of how this raid is going to go with the four of us. I hope you all have a wonderful night, and be sure to check out our previous episodes if you missed any of them. They will be in our link tree below somewhere in our socials. And we will keep you all updated when more streams come up and what the next episode will be. Hope you... We're going to close this out. Everyone say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.